Welcome. I want to thank, first of all the speakers in particular who have traveled a long way to come and have spent a tremendous amount of time putting their presentations together and working on this. It's going to be fascinating to hear what they have to say around innovation. And it's not necessarily going to be just how do they create an innovative product. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. How do you create a culture of innovation? How do you create a culture of innovation? But before that, I want to talk just for a second about what the aim of the conference is. And the aim of this conference is to learn, have fun, gain new knowledge about innovative organizations that think differently and challenge the status quo. Now, I thought we'd start with definition of innovation. There's a million of them out there. This is just one. Something new or different introduced. So think about that as we go along. Something new or different introduced. And for those of you, how many of you were in the pre-conference session over the last couple days? Talking about education? I couldn't believe, and you'll get a kick out of this, underneath, you know how they always, after a definition, they give you a sentence with which to use it in? Here's the sentence they gave us to use. Numerous innovations in high school curriculum. Not too many of those, have there been, David? Have you experienced a lot of them? And as we're thinking about it, one of the things that we believe in is the importance of leading and being an innovative business or education organization. We believe that that's more critical than ever because innovation comes in all shapes and sizes. We all think of groundbreaking ones, such as the ones that disrupt markets, create new services and devices, and challenge the way we work and think. And to be innovative, though, our leaders must challenge that status quo. I remember as Steve Jobs once famously said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. And history bears it out with few exceptions. Innovation is driven by who? Individuals, small companies, and organizations. When you think about it, who comes to mind? Devices, you think about the iPhone, the iPad, the printing press. We think about people, Benjamin Franklin, Elon Musk more recently, Steve Jobs, Edison. And you think about those who were innovative and introduced new ideas that led to great social change. Gandhi and Martin Luther King. So it's not just about the devices. What we found is that, unfortunately, so often, our best efforts and hard works to create innovative organizations actually stifle and derail those efforts. But we can ask anyone in this room, around the country, around the world, do you believe innovation's a good thing? With very few exceptions, and there is some variation, the answer is yes. Then why is innovation so often attributed to the individual entrepreneur or small group? Very seldom do you hear about education systems, which have been long established, being highly innovative, though they often try and clearly realize the importance. I believe it's because they have not created an organizational culture that drives out fear and embraces intrinsic motivation and joy in work. In other words, it's because they're embracing and perpetuating the existing status quo and prevailing style of management. By doing that, innovation is very hard to come by. I'd like to share an experience with an organization and the impact it had on employees and management alike who were all in the fruitless attempt to be innovative. And it started about 5 years ago when Kelly Allen, who will be speaking next, and my wife Judy and I were in Singapore. And we were working with an organization, NTUC Learning Hub. And NTUC asked us, they said, we've just had an organization that has a big factory here in Singapore, and they're a multinational corporation. And they've asked us to come out because they're very focused on innovation. but they're having some problems with it. We want to see if you folks would go in and see what you could learn and see what you might be able to discuss with them. So we go to this company, and they produce a product that's sold locally in Singapore and the Asia Pacific region. That's done very well. It has about a 90% market share of the product. And they had started losing share recently. And so corporate had said, you've got to be innovative. That's the only way you're going to come up with new products and new ideas. They said, all right, we're going to be innovative. So they came up with an innovative box that they put at the front reception. They had about 150 employees. And they told the employees that each of you every month must come up with 2 innovative ideas and put them in the box. And your performance appraisal at the end of the year depends upon how many ideas, first of all, the fact that you put the ideas in there, and second of all, that you get a bonus if one of your ideas is picked. I thought, okay, so what's the problem? We had a feeling we knew what the problem was. They were 3 months into it. They had 900 suggestions on how to be innovative. 900. They were going on month 4, working on 1,200. And they did not know what to do. Corporate had heard about it and thought, this is a great idea. So your performance appraisal is going to be based on how well this experiment works. They were stuck. And the fascinating thing about it was that after the fact that, we all just stood there completely flabbergasted, it became very clear that what was their interest? Management interest was now in just saving themselves. How could they do this? And they were scared to death that they were going to miss one of those ideas and pay the price for it. So what it did was it had the reverse effect of not driving out innovation. It had the effect of creating even more fear within the organization. And what became, they were telling us how the work environment had been fairly good before that, at least that was their opinion. But now it had become a very hostile work environment. And so here is a company that's been around for well over 100 years that was struggling with what to do. And when we started to ask questions that would lead us to think that they might be interested in changing the boundaries of the system with which they operated in, they had no interest in doing that. Not at all. They were going to fix it within the boundaries of the current system. It wasn't going to work. Had no chance of working. And this is very typical of the organizations we've come across, whether it's in Singapore, whether it's in business, whether it's in education. And one of the things my grandfather said about such organizations, and I quote, "The people that work in any organization know what they are doing, but they will not by themselves learn a better way. Their best efforts and hard work only dig deeper the pit that they are working in. Their best efforts and hard work do not provide an outside view or lens of the organization." The way we saw, these folks were digging deeper into a pit they were already in. Now, think about it from the other spectrum. This was a company that had been around for over 100 years. What about the innovative startup that introduces new or something different? Why do they lose their appetite for risk when they reach a certain size? So I thought I'd share just a personal experience on risk and size of an organization. As co-founder of a very innovative startup company in the late 90s, we were quickly out-pitching venture capitalists, angel investors to fund the organization. And we put all the numbers together, all the different things we knew that they would need. But the one thing my partner and I were talking about was, how are we going to explain that we're using a different management philosophy than probably any of them that are out there using? How are we going to explain the Deming management philosophy when we might only have 15 minutes? Quick elevator pitch. How do we get around that? How do we tell them what we believe? And so we went in there. And frankly, they don't even give you a chance. And all they want to do is boom, 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 give me the numbers, give me this, give me that. And interestingly enough, how many times do you think we were ever asked about management philosophy? Not a single time. And I thought, wow, they're really missing the boat on this because, this might be a big selling point down the road for them. But no one asked about it, and no one even challenged the approach. As you can imagine, they asked about everything else imaginable. But I thought it was really fascinating. I thought maybe they're missing the boat. But as I explored it and went along over the years, it kind of came to me that they didn't care about short-term profits. They wanted all the money reinvested in further innovation, long-term sales, and additional growth. So when they read about it, and I asked one of them who was a friend of the family later, he said, we thought it was a great idea. We weren't going to bother spending the 15, 20 minutes I had with you to discuss this. You guys seem to be on the right track. Never dawned on me. But it was explained to us that if we did hit the big time, the next step was the investment banking arena. And what did that mean? That meant that we were now going to have to step aside and let the, quote, real managers, money people, and God forbid, HR departments come in and run the business. We could no longer act, as Steve Jobs said, like the crazy ones, thinking differently and challenging the status quo. It was going to be time for us, if we got to that stage, to stop taking innovative risks, collaborating, creating, and having fun. We would have to start acting, we were told, like grown-ups. Manage risk, use the tools and techniques our business, schools, and education systems had taught us. We were going to have to start using things that would reduce the risk of employees suing us. Do things such as evaluations, rating and ranking, quotas, and incentives to increase performance, and that was going to be the innovation driver going forward. Pretty sad and depressing in the long term. And in talking with many others, we had a club that used to meet on Friday nights at a local bar in Santa Monica. And it was a fascinating group of people, founder of Stamps.com and a number of other tech companies that are still out there and thriving were there. And we were all talking about it. And that was one of the things. Sure, some of them were focused on how soon can we get to the IPO stage and cash in and ride off into the sunset. It was funny talking to them. Why did they want to cash in and ride off the sunset? Sure, they wanted to have some money. They weren't interested in the billions or the millions or the hundreds of millions you always hear about in the press. What they were really interested in was getting their money and getting out before they had to change the way they currently operated, because they knew they weren't going to last in the organization that drove out that intrinsic motivation that they had, that didn't challenge the status quo anymore, didn't allow them to think differently. What I learned was, it doesn't matter, though, whether you're an established company, a startup, or a school. We need to embrace the idea of being innovative, but doing so on an ongoing basis. We need to create the cultures within our organization that are not afraid of risk, that drive out fear, and embrace intrinsic motivation, joy in work, while creating, as we were talking about for the last 2 days, a learning organization. At this conference, you're going to be inspired by speakers in business and education who are not only unafraid to think differently, but are crazy enough to change their organizations, the ones they work with, through their own innovative ideas and efforts. And they do it for a number of very fascinating reasons, which you'll hear about. But the key is they did it. Some of you who are speaking have only been on this journey for a short time. Some of you, the journey started in, I think, Stephen, 1878? But they all have that unique common thread that will be explored at this conference. The thread is the Deming management philosophy, where continual learning is seen as the source of innovation, which in turn has led to growth and success. And while I talk about how important the leader is in the organization. There may be some of you who are just starting out, maybe a teacher in a schoolroom, maybe an employee or going into a new company. And you think, wait a second, I'm middle-level management, I'm lower, I've just started out. There's nothing I can do. I'm not the boss. I'm not the one who can change stuff. But again, one of the things that we talked about over the last couple days is every single person in this room, doesn't matter if you're still in school, you're just getting out and going into the business world, you each have a sphere of influence that you can impact. Might just be your family, might be your community. You each have a sphere of influence you can impact. And you start there. And that's what I did when I got into business. I started there. I knew I couldn't change the way the organization was operating around me when I got out of school. But I could change that sphere of influence, and that can have a huge impact on the people around you. So I encourage you, don't think you just have to be a leader. Yes, it's much easier. You can make greater gains. You can make them quickly. But you also have that. I want to leave you with two thoughts. First, I believe the ideas being shared this weekend that have so deeply impacted our speakers will also inspire you to seek new knowledge, inspire you to action, and begin building innovative organizations and communities that we all believe possible. Everybody's frustrated with government, with their communities. You have a chance. Use this as a starting point. We can't think of a better reason to share these ideas. Finally, as I was writing this, I don't know how I was impacted by hearing this a number of years ago. I kept thinking as I was talking to my wife, Judy, and I keep bringing up thinking differently, crazy ones, status quo, all these different things, and some other ideas that my grandfather talked about. And I wanted to share with you, some of you have seen this a couple of years ago, but I want to share with you again a 1-minute TV commercial that I believe epitomizes the essence of what it takes to create a culture of innovation. I personally find it inspiring, and I think my grandfather would have appreciated if he were alive today.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Go change the world. Thank you very much.